for folks who may not be able, we're going to record, so if folks need to go off camera, please do so now. Thank you so much.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go ahead and utilize the Zoom chat. So if you have any questions that I may not have covered during this presentation, please put your comments and questions in the chat and we can address them at the end. Thank you. So for a brief NOFA overview, the city has federal, state, and local funding sources to allocate to affordable housing programs and projects. So the city solicits applications for project funding on a competitive basis for awarding City of Oakland funds for the development of multifamily affordable housing. So funding awards will be based on ranking and funding availability. So we're trying to not have to go back to council for recommendations. So we're trying to do that all in one fell swoop. Next slide. So our NOFA aligns with the capital investment equity framework in the city's strategic action plan and the approach to fund as many areas as possible, starting with the priority strategies. So we're trying to first address homelessness units, permanent supportive housing, and we know that there's a limitation there in operating, but then low income units and down the line. So as you see here on the slide with the green and blue swiggly arrows, we start at the top and we work our way down the waterfall. Also, HCD frames its housing policy around 3 different initiatives, the 3P approach, so which are protection of existing tenants and homeowners, preservation of existing units, and production of new construction of affordable housing and market rate units to address historical racial equity in housing and target neighborhoods where residents that are subject to displacement pressures. So we looked at the entire NOFA overall and considering the concerns and the information that was received. So here are some basic categories in the next slide that we've received comments on, and we're open to looking for more feedback to assist us in finalizing our NOFA for release. So in the next couple of slides, we'll go over some of the basic categories and thoughts of what we're looking at changing and seeking feedback from you all on this call today. So with our timeline for the NOFA, sorry, my computer. Thank you. The NOFA release is scheduled for September 23rd. We will have a bidders meeting, and that's going to be October 7th. And then the City of Oakland HCD office hours, I will hold those on October 11th and October 18th. And then I'll put in the NOFA the date again and the time that I'll be allowing for office hours for you guys to come, ask questions, get clarifying feedback if needed. And then the NOFA application deadline is November 4th at 5 p.m. And then the award date will be early January 2025. So that'll be initial awards and commitment letters being sent out to awardees. Like last year, I will have Q&A. Can you go back one? Trish, thank you. Q&A email. So one will be due October 10th. Then we will put that on the city website. And then the other would be October 17th. And then also putting that on the city website a couple days after. So that'll be up for people who weren't able to go to the office hours. They could go to the website and look at the questions and answers there. And then no application questions will be allowed after October 18th. So please be sure to attend office hours, get your emails in to staff for comments back. But again, there will be no questions asked after October 18th. So here are some of the scoring and threshold changes that we are thinking about with this new NOFA. So I'll let Tricia take it away.
Sure. Couple of different categories, as you'll see here, where we've either had feedback or know that we need to make some tweaks. The first is the CIDLAC and TCAC. We would likely continue to prioritize projects that can be awarded CIDLAC and TCAC funds and move forward quickly. So again, prioritizing the 4% projects that can score 120 points or 119-point projects that don't need state credits and or 9% projects. We really heavily emphasized that last year and successfully were able to get projects across the threshold. And we do realize that there's a tension there between projects that are closer to being able to move forward into construction and also keeping the pipeline robust and keeping affordable housing projects moving forward. Second, we for readiness versus pipeline projects, which I talked about a little bit, we do want to create that pipeline due to the oversubscription of city resources and to be but still move projects quickly should funding come available between NOFA cycles. We mentioned last year, but we're planning to move towards, or actually the spring, we mentioned the spring, planning to move towards an 18-month to 2-year cadence of NOFA releases. The idea is that we would do a NOFA release to keep the pipeline fresh and get new information about older projects, but be able to work through that pipeline as funding becomes available. So if the BAFA bond does get approved, that would be something that could get added to the flow without having to do a whole new NOFA process every year. So it's a little bit of a departure from previous practice, but the idea would that we'd have a semi-regular schedule every 18 to 24 months where we would be doing another new construction NOFA to allow fresh projects into the pipeline. Couple of things to note here. We're going to have this round a document threshold and minimum point score established to determine the cutoff for projects to be on the pipeline. And being on the project pipeline doesn't absolutely guarantee funding. So just want to be clear about that. The third thing that we're reviewing currently is planning approvals. So we're working with planning and building on SB 35 reviews, along with ministerial reviews under SB 13 and 14 to kind of understand how the project applications flow and also deal with the point scoring in the NOFA application. We are considering adding points for projects that have received approvals through ministerial process at the time of application to encourage the use of ministerial review and expedited approval timelines. So that's something to keep in mind for your projects. We also are looking at our leveraging versus funding sections. Currently, leveraging has been included in the readiness scoring. We're actually considering moving that from readiness, given that basically all the sources that you're applying for are competitive. So uncommitted funds aren't necessarily the most valuable knowledge now about what a project needs to start construction. So we'll be looking instead at how it's weighted in our scoring and threshold requirement for loan sizing based on total development cost instead of using leverage necessarily as a point scoring category. And then for public land, we have heard requests for some consideration for additional points for projects located on public land that's either leased or conveyed to the project at a nominal cost. The public land is a valuable resource, and so we do want to move all the affordable housing projects forward. But we are particularly sensitive to the needs of projects that are on public land. Alicia, I'll turn over to you.
Thanks, Krisha. So for geographic equity, we know that the boundaries of the HCD NOFA for gentrifying neighborhoods changed significantly last year. So we're working on accurately reflecting this process and researching to align more with CIDLAC and PCAC and state HCD requirements. So I know that's good news. Amenities, revise amenities to score more encourage walkable and transit-oriented developments and remove the school district metric and align the amenities with also CIDLAC and TCAC. And then for emerging developers, refining the emerging developer language to allow the opportunity for less experienced developers to qualify, and then align the definition more accurately to reducing the number of points available projects that have emerging developers on the team. So definitely aligning the definition so that it's more accurate. So I know there was some the definition wasn't just aligning up right. So we're just trying to align that better for everyone. And then also the joint venture clarifying points that are available to joint ventures. So if one of the JV partner qualifies as an emerging developer and controls 51% of the entity, so then increasing the points that are available that the project is eligible for to receive the joint venture points. And then on slide 8, we have programmatic changes. So for permanent supportive housing, there was a differentiation between special needs and PSH units. So we would like to redefine and align one definition with the state definitions of PSH, and then such as the MHP guidelines. So, aligning that to coincide with our NOFA also. We heard a lot of comments back on the financial workbook. So we've decided to go back to the 2020 workbook and then make some revisions to that workbook to make it flow better for the developer and also for city staff in reviewing. And we're also, for the applications, we're removing the application limit to allow more applicants to submit applications. And then to allow more applications, we're expecting the applications to be complete and they must meet threshold requirements. Otherwise, the application will be rejected with no opportunity for corrections. So, just making sure your application is complete and you have all the necessary documentations for your application. And then in making these changes to the NOFA, it also allows HCD to build a better pipeline for future project fundings. So I'll turn it over now to Ali to discuss further.
Thanks, Arlisha and Krisha. That was a great rundown of all of the feedback that we've been hearing. And I think folks will hear that we have been doing a lot of thinking around how to best align the Oakland NOFA with the other leveraged resources that are available out there. So this is really kind of our goal to both align projects that you've heard are ready to go and ready to access funds through the competitive bond and TCAC processes, and to ensure that we have a pipeline going forward so that when we do get additional funding, either when additional Measure U is released, if we can get any of that, or when the BAFA bond passes, that we'd be able to fold those fundings in right away and be able to continue to fund down the pipeline. So that's just kind of the overarching goal that we've been discussing, and we'd love to hear feedback from folks on any specific ideas you may have or any reactions to the items that we've run through today.
So now, we can open it up now for any questions that folks may have. Definitely for the feedback. I know you guys have already reached out to us and you've given us our comments. So, I guess if there's any additional changes that you would like to see to help strengthen the city's new construction NOFA, or any other key challenges that you face with your NOFA application that we have not addressed that you think is important, or if you think that there's something else that's important that we can prove on this program, now is the time. If you want to come off mute, ask your questions, that's fine.
Hey, Arlisha, there's a question in the chat from Cyrus, and they are asking, does a NOFA encourage projects on public land?
Yeah.
And I can take that one. Currently, it would be encouraged mostly through leveraging of committed funding. We don't have a separate point category for projects that have a public land commitment. And I do just want to take the moment to note that I accidentally mentioned SB 13 and 14, probably confused people. We're talking in the planning and building about ministerial approvals for affordable housing projects. So sorry about that.
And just to further the question on the public land, so the current NOFA, like Chris just said, there's the leveraging aspect. The thing that we are considering is if there should be an extra point scoring for public land projects that are either conveyed or leased to the project at a nominal cost.
Okay, there's another question in the chat from Nate. Any thoughts about allowing housing authority utility allowance or the QAC in addition to HUSM to align with TCAC?
So we're still having internal conversations with the housing authority. So at this point, we haven't gotten that far into the Hudson tool. So I'd have to get back to you on that, Nate. But as of now, it's still the same. So if that changes, I definitely will address that at the bidders meeting.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that point, one of the things that is requiring us to look at the HUD utility allowance schedule is that we do use this NOFA to award our home funds. So in most cases, you will have greater flexibility on the back end, sort of by right, because we have very little home funds, but we have to prepare for that eventuality. That's why we are using the home utility allowance schedule. I see Alyssa has her hand up, and then we've got another few questions in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. Just quickly on the SIDLAC and TCAC scoring, I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into understanding what you're going to give the points for, because just the 120 no longer is like anything isn't automatic in terms of being able to get bonds and credits. So I'm just kind of wondering what the metrics. I think I'm glad that you're doing what you did last year in terms of giving priority to projects that it can actually take the money and move forward. But I'm just wanted to figure out a little bit more refined what you're going to put in there, because just having 120 is not anything automatic at this point.
So Alyssa, it was 120 last year. It was 120 or 119, yeah. and not needing the state credits. And I think one of the things we are looking at is whether to continue that path, but also for ways to loosen it up so that we are funding projects that are a little further away from readiness for that.
And I can also jump in and say that we don't have the scoring set right now. We wanted to make sure that we got the feedback, and if there is feedback, Alyssa, that you think that would be important for us to take into account, you're more than welcome to either share that verbally or written. I do think that we are trying to look at which ones would be obviously most competitive. So it doesn't mean like that every project that we would fund would necessarily be a slam dunk and win, but it would be the highest up kind of in the sort would be the goal. So 120 projects would be first in line until a certain time. And then we could also look at the different, the different new construction set asides. Maybe there's different scoring within that. I think we're open.
Okay, yeah, let's talk further about it. I just wanted to make the point that the 120 by itself is not a guarantee. So if you're looking at kind of having, a set of projects get funded that are guarantees, and then a set that are building the pipeline, just kind of making sure how you calibrate those. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, there's another question on the chat. What has been the discussion on prioritizing the IIGC funded projects for which the city and the projects have a performance deadline?
So I can start, and then I actually need to head out. But Arlisha and Ali can pick up. I think one thing that comes to mind is that something with committed funds like the IIGC would get a scoring boost from those committed funds. And also theoretically is able to is further along the development pipeline, so would be closer to being able to apply for the other funding sources like tax credits. We should talk, I think, Lieben, more because the performance deadlines may be a little bit more flexible. So I don't know, Ali or Alicia, if there's anything you want to add, and that's very project specific. So do you want to, keep thinking here about the broader pipeline implications?
I would just say I agree with you, Krista. I think it's committed funds and how close things are to being ready to compete and move forward. So that would be the prioritization, no matter what the funding source committed would be.
Okay, the next question in the chat is saying, how soon can we submit an application? I do not know when I will start construction. How soon can I submit the application?
So you would really need to have a complete application and know your project timeline. Because if you don't have a project timeline, then the city wouldn't know your timeline. So you would just need to know when would you be breaking ground? When would you have all your funding sources? So those are questions more for you to dig deeper on and then provide that information to us. And then we can let you know, okay, that will align with submitting your application to this NOFA or the next NOFA, but I can't tell that offhand because I don't have your information.
And I'll just, oh, sorry.
Okay, so sorry, this Sanjeev, the guy, I'm the guy who submitted this question. So I like to know, for example, my project has received 2 times comments from the building department. It's not like I'm throwing this question in air. So maybe my project can be ready probably in 4 months, maybe 6 months. I don't know. I mean, I'm not talking like a year from now or something like that. So let's say this way, if if you hold, I'm assuming that the given fund has to be used within the year, correct? Something like that within the fiscal year. So overall, that timeline can help me.
Well, I think this may be a project specific question, Sanjeev, so it may be better if you connect during the office hours when the actual NOFA is released and you can read through what the requirements are. But there are also going to be threshold documentation that is required and a threshold number of points in order to score. So I think you would have to review your project against the requirements and see if you meet those requirements before you would know if you could submit the funding application. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Okay, the next question from Delvin. How are you prioritizing sites that aren't as competitive per TCAC scoring that are not on public-owned land?
Oh, Ali, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think that if they're not public owned land and they're not as competitive on TCAC scoring, they wouldn't have a priority in the NOFA, so they probably wouldn't get points for that.
Thanks. The next question from Audrey asks, could you clarify the point about encouraging ministerial review?
So in our last NOFA, it was just either you had entitlements or you didn't. And so this time we're trying to allow for projects that have gone through SB 35 or SB or S13 or S14. So we're still working through the point system on that, but we're trying to award points for folks that have gone through the review.
And just to kind of add to some of the background thinking on that, the reason the city would want to encourage the use of ministerial approvals for the entitlements would be that it speeds up the time frame for entitlement review and theoretically lowers costs. So that would be a kind of city project priority. And then secondarily, kind of points would be obtained by having just obtained your entitlement approvals. So there would be kind of a two-tier point scoring on the entitlement approval readiness. And then a lower amount of points could be available to projects that have just submitted for their entitlements and been deemed approved by the planning department by the application deadline. So that's kind of how we're thinking about dividing it up and giving that overall city policy priorities.
Thanks, Ali and Arlisha. The next question is, how can you get your project added to the city's pipeline projects list?
So right now, we're again prioritizing projects that are competitive for bonds and credits, and that can start construction the soonest. And so with this being in mind, you can still submit your project, but even though you're submitting your project application, you still would need to meet the threshold and the minimum point scores to be established at the time of the NOFA. But even though, again, if you're on the project pipeline, that's not going to guarantee you funding.
Do any projects, Arlisha, get priorities? If so, what kind of projects get priorities?
So our priority, so who asked that? That person?
This is from Sanjeev.
Okay, Sanjeev, can you clarify your question?
Sanjeev? Okay, we might have lost Sanjeev. I see him on, but.
Okay, we can come back and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is the local contracting and employment program applying to this NOFA? This has had significant cost impacts on our projects. That's from Cyrus.
Ali, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yes, the local contracting employment program will apply because this is city funding through Measure U and other city funds.
Okay, next question from Sarah. It sounds like you are thinking it through, but hoping the leverage section considers the encouragement of PSH, but there are no PBVs available, so less likely to be able to support a perm loan, meaning less leverage.
Yeah, that's correct, Sarah. So we're still in the works on that.
Elisa's asking, what's the latest guess on funds available?
We have not gotten the dollar amount yet. So as soon as we know, we'll let you guys know.
Okay, Nate has a question. Will ministerial approval points be awarded to projects that are shown to qualify via attorney opinion, as is case for state HCD? Or will project have to have received full entitlements through streamlining to receive points? I believe last year partial points were awarded for projects that had submitted an entitlement application, but sometimes those applications can take some time to work through planning.
Yeah, so Nate, that was the issue, that there were projects that were submitting the entitlements, the application for entitlements at the same day they submitted the application. And so we want to squeeze that out. So yes, you will get full points if you've submitted your application and it's gone through the streamlining process.
Thanks, Arlisha. Courtney, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. Good morning. I was hoping you could just speak a little bit more about the change to align the definition of permanent supportive housing with MHP. I guess when I think about that, I know last time in the NOFA, there were like two separate categories you could score points in. One was for special needs units provided, and then there was a second category for permanent supportive housing that was very narrowly defined for homeless households. And so I was hoping you could just speak to, when I hear aligning with MHP, I'm thinking like broadening PSH to mean just like many target populations, whether that's like formerly homeless or people with disabilities or TAY, or, you know, kind of a broader definition, and I was just hoping to get some clarity on whether that was the same way you were thinking of going with that clarification.
Yeah, we're thinking about broadening the requirements in that section, like how MHP has their guidelines, because ours was broken out. So we're wanting to combine them both together and kind of align the same kind of definitions so that it's more clearer in our NOFA. Allie, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's that's exactly what we are thinking about. And we'd like to hear feedback from folks as to how you think this will or will not align with your projects. I mean, basically, like exactly what Arlisha said, in our NOFA, it was split out. So there's like a little population here, a little population here. It could be supportive, but not PSA, or I mean, it could be special needs, but not PSH. And so it seemed too granular, I think. And so being able to broaden the definition would, I think, be less confusing and maybe be more open for serving the same kind of income levels of populations without having to divide out kind of what special needs they have. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to kind of respond. So I appreciate the clarification. I think that that's a welcome change. I think along the lines of what I see Alyssa, putting in the chat, like I think the specific percentage that you're looking at does matter for alignment with our projects. I do think, as her question is getting at, like the 50% incentive for homeless plus the additional like special needs percentage that I forget off the top of my head, that's like a very high percentage of the development. And so making sure that we, can also serve ELI households who are not necessarily in need of like permanent supportive housing with services, but who, are like working extremely low income folks who just need that deep subsidy in order to, rent their apartments, I think is, important. And I would hope that that's a priority that's reflected in the new guidelines.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback on that.
Any other questions, comments, or feedback before we move on?
Oh, and maybe, Trisha, I can just tie that together with Courtney's question and then what she mentioned that Alyssa put in the chat. Yes, we are looking at the percentage target of units in how we're maximizing scoring, especially with I think as everyone knows, we don't have as much PBVs available through OHA as used to be. So that is exactly what Arlisha talked about in our funding priorities, that we know that there is a kind of limit on the operating subsidy either through the city or through the housing authority. So we do need to kind of try to work best to align that. And it also may be that projects have to think about doing a self-funded capitalized operating subsidy reserve in order to make those work. But I think those are all the things that we are looking to incorporate in thinking about this new NOFA.
Thanks, Allie.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Alyssa, we are talking to OHA on the RAS, but that's also in the discussion phase. We're not sure about that right now.
Thanks, Allie. Courtney, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more question. I was curious, TCAC updated their developer fees earlier this year. And so I just was wondering whether or not the city was also planning to update their requirements to align with TCAC's new maximum fees.
That was one of the comments that have came in that we haven't gotten that far down the line to discuss that yet, but it is on our radar.
And I think, I mean, Arlisha, correct me if I'm wrong, I think ours defers to TCAC's anyway in our addenda.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. So as of right now, you know, we're still in the works, still getting our minds together to figure out, you know, what's best for the city of Oakland, also you as developers, and how to get your projects funded and through and groundbreaking. So we're excited about that. Some of the information will be updated on the city website. So please take a look if you want more information at the link here. Please contact me if you have any additional questions or comments that come to your mind and you want to ask. Please do send me an email. And that's it. Thank you all for
Alicia,
Oh.
how long are we accepting comments from stakeholders? Is there a cutoff on that?
Yeah, there is. If you want to go back, Tricia, to the timeline.
Sorry, just want to make sure everybody's got that in.
Yeah. So again, setting up the City of Oakland HCD office hours so folks can come on October 11th and 12th. Talk to me about your application, ask comments, feedback. That's allowed. And then whatever is taken from the 11th and the 8th, that would be put in an email along with anyone who had any additional comments. So the last email date is October 10th, and then again on October 17th, and then on the 18th for the office hours. So those will all be put in a document and then uploaded to the city's website for viewing. And then also the office hours will be on there also for reviewing. And then again, no application questions will be allowed after October 18th.
Great, thanks for, yeah, that's the post NOFA release timeline. Is before we release the NOFA, is there any kind of thinking of when we would cut off consideration of new comments or suggestions by stakeholders in that kind of before September 23rd date?
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again, Allie.
So we're doing the listening feedback sessions right now, and we're encouraging folks to continue emailing questions about scoring or thinking about priorities to us right now. But
Yes,
we're going to stop taking those comments at a certain point.
Yes, so that would be September 23rd, we'll release the NOFA. And then after that, you can ask questions up until the 11th and then up until the 18th, because that's the office hours. But as far as emails,
but I think cutting off comments about how we're doing scoring, about what input we're taking in for our drafting of the NOFA, we'll probably cut that off. What would you say, maybe like mid-August, early August?
Yeah, I'd say mid-August. So let me look at the calendar because I have a calendar schedule, and then I can send an email out on the email string that I've sent to everyone about the cutoff.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right, we actually have another question before we drop off here. Libin, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but you can go ahead and please unmute.
Thanks, Tricia. It's Levin. I'm sorry if I missed this in the question about the supportive housing prioritization, but as you guys know, because we've had conversation about this, county CalAIM population is different from the MHP definition for supportive housing. And so with the alignment to the MHP definition, which is, as you know, under that health and safety code, very narrowly defined, is there no prioritization for the CalAIM population being referred by the county for projects?
Well, we were suggesting aligning with the MHP definition. However, if you have comments or suggestions, you're welcome to email those to us. Like Arlisha was saying, we're still accepting comments and suggestions on scoring and prioritization through some date in August, which will be sent out to this email group.
Okay, I appreciate that. We did submit a written comment about the CalAIM, but can submit some further detail if that would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, all the comments that you guys have sent over, thank you so much. I have compiled them and have put them in a spreadsheet. We were focusing more on the general of what people said and then what we felt at the city. So these are just a combination of things that we've heard and things that we have seen on our end. But again, nothing is really set in stone. But yes, if you have additional information, Leben, please do send that over.
Great, thank you.
Lisa has another question in the chat. It's some of the location items change year to year. What about using last 3 years?
I think that's a fine suggestion. We can note that down.
Thanks, Elisa. Any other questions or comments?
I think, Courtney, you asked about the draft NOFA. There's not going to be a draft of the NOFA submitted before the 23rd. It goes through several stages, and drafting one now, it's going to take too long, and that may further push the date out.
Okay,
Any
thanks,
additional
Courtney.
questions? Okay. Well, again, please email me. I know most of you guys have my email address. I will circulate this PowerPoint around for any additional comments or questions. So thank you all for your participation and feedback. It was much appreciated. So thank you.
Thanks, Arlisha.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Trisha.
Thanks.
Thanks for the comments, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.